2005,
Hmm?
2006, 2007. Welcome very much to Conversation. It's a pleasure, personal pleasure, to welcome back to Conversation Stage Gilad Atzmon. He's a saxophone player extraordinaire, like Charlie Parker. To mention one person like that. And he's also a very, very active person, although he likes to think of himself as a commentator, political commentator. He's written a controversial book in the minds of many called The Wandering Who, that has to do with his the place where he was born, Israel. He's living now in Britain, and he's here on a concert tour, and he's always got interesting things to say about the political context. Always good to talk to you. Welcome one more time, my good brother. Gilad, it's so good to see you. Welcome to the set.
Great to see you as well. I'm very happy.
So I think we could do something. I know you've been very interested in the definition of terms and that kind of stuff about identity politics and so forth.
Indeed.
Now, maybe I think the whole world is, why don't we also talk some about the recent election in the United States of America, Donald Trump. What is the word you get? You're living in Britain for the most part. What is the word you're getting in Britain, or what's the word that's coming into your consciousness when you take a shower in the morning about the implications of the election scene in the United States as it relates to the world society?
I think that there are a lot of very interesting aspects about this political transition, and it's not just in America. As you probably know, we had a similar event in Britain just a few months ago, the Brexit. And before the Brexit, we realized that half of the Scots want to depart from the kingdom.
Yeah, it's happening over in Europe
and
too
we see it now all over Europe. French are talking about Frexit, and so on and so on. Now, it is quite astonishing to see that the main media outlets, mainly liberal outlets, are completely in the dark. And this explains why they couldn't predict Trump victory. Now, some people criticize me for saying that it was a landslide victory, but it was a landslide victory.
You think it was?
It was a landslide victory, especially within the context of the low predictability of this victory. The man was a very interesting strategist. Now, I'm not a Trump supporter. I'm just commenting on the events.
He reminds me of Mussolini.
To a certain extent.
Fear of fascism in my older mind consciousness.
I'm not so sure.
Okay.
I'm not so sure that is qualified for being called a fascist. I'm not an admirer of Chomsky, but Noam Chomsky. But he said something clever when people compared Trump to Hitler. Rather than Mussolini. Chomsky said a few weeks ago, after the election, he said, no, Hitler was an ideologist. Trump is not there. He's a populist. He's a strategist. He would do whatever it takes to win the next target. So when he had to win the Republican Party, he came with one kind of agenda, and then it shifted, and we will probably see more and more Goldman Sachs sitting in his administration. He's not committed to anything, to any ideological standpoint, and so on and so on. What was very fascinating for me, and I was probably the first person to write extensively about identity politics, is that, as far as I'm concerned, America is divided between those who regard themselves as identitarians and those who regard themselves primarily as Americans. I will elaborate. The identitarians are people who subscribe to the as-a philosophy. They identify as a Jew, as a lesbian, as a gay, as a black, as a.
That's a term. Do you have that term trademark?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can I use it?
As long as you send me. As a philosophy. Now, the whole idea, and we can elaborate why America fell into this trap, because it's a deadly trap, as Hillary Clinton may be able to acknowledge now, but she's partly to be blamed for it. Why did American New Left or liberals or progressives, why did they fall into this trap? When we were young, when I was young, you were just a bit older, but when we were young, the left claimed to unite us. They used to tell us, it doesn't matter if you are black, if you are lesbian, if you are Muslim, if you are Jew, we are all together against the capital.
Yeah.
And then at a certain stage, they dropped this idea that was very appealing for me at the time. And they introduced this divisive strategy. Divisive strategy. They started to teach us to talk as a. And I looked into it, and I came to the conclusion that the two elements that pushed for it were, first, the left, the old stupid left that didn't really realize where they were going. And why? Left is always slightly upset with the fact that working people have never bought into the revolution. It's very easy to explain. Working people don't have to identify with working class politics. And the reason is they are going to work in the morning. They know that they are working class because this is what they do. They go to work. Working class people find it very easy to identify with the flag. And why? Because if you identify in the flag, Abraham Lincoln, Manhattan Project, American being a superpower, it's all part of your existence. It's much simpler than the left ideology of a working class and a battle with the if you try to read Marx, it hardly makes sense.
It gets pretty dense.
It doesn't make sense. The flag is such a simple, if you're British and you follow you subscribe to the idea of the Union Jack, then Newton and Churchill become your extended family.
Yeah, but you have the British Empire upon which the sun never set. Maybe the first time there was ever a British an empire worldwide that was part of that they related to, and the dynastic families 1,000 years after Rome.
For sure, but I want to concentrate on this issue of the left. What the left realized that in order to subside the working class and to dismantle this cohesiveness that is somehow conservative oriented, the way to do it is to break the working people into political groups. Women, lesbian, Jews, black. Interestingly enough, Jewish intelligentsia were also horrified by the idea of working class being united, cohesive group. And they also thought that it would be much safer for the Jews if the working class are not a single unit driven by proper lefty working class politics and start to be broken into tribes, because they become an extension of the Jewish tribe. So society.
Is that a divide and conquer kind of
It's
strategy?
divide. It's exactly divide.
That's been going on
divide,
for a long time.
Divide and conquer.
Yeah, right.
And it is not very surprising that the person who currently, or in the last 15 years, funds this entire project is George Soros.
I was gonna say right off the
George
street.
Soros through his Open Society Institute.
You do realize it's one block up from where we sit.
Yeah,
now,
and
his
my next
office.
meeting
Yeah,
is
right.
my next meeting
Yeah,
is with
right,
George
right,
Soros. Yeah. No, he tries to buy me. I said, "Listen, man, I'm too cheap. I'm a jazz musician." He doesn't know, I'm so cheap.
Jazz musician.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The currency they
You
don't
know,
even know.
you're a dynamite jazz musician.
Thank you.
I tell you, I've been to those concerts. They are something else.
Thank you so
Really,
much.
Your reputation precedes you, and you deserve all the accolades that have come down.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So what we see now in Britain and in the United States is a fierce battle between a collective of identitarian groups and those who decide to see themselves primarily as Americans. And they say, it doesn't matter. All right, I'm black. I'm a black lesbian, but I live in this country. And what I do in bed is my own business. What it is more important for me to have a job, to have education for my kids if I have kids, to have a proper health system. And these issues can only handled by pretty much at the moment a revolutionary nationalist attitude. Now, whether Trump is the guy who is going to deliver any of that is a big question. Nobody knows. Really, nobody knows, including Donald Trump. It doesn't have
right.
it doesn't have any history. Never sat in office. We are really clueless. What we can learn by now is that there is a tsunami of fatigue. And fatigue
in the world,
in the Western world.
Well, certainly in the Western
I'm
world.
talking about the West, and I really don't know what is happening in India. This is something that I don't comment on. Or Antarctica. But there is a huge fatigue. Now, fatigue of what? And this is a very interesting question.
Yeah, what's happening?
I'm taking kind of an unusual path here.
Okay, good.
All along the American campaign, I've noticed that the Jewish liberal and progressive media handled a fierce battle against Trump and against his supporters.
Is that true? I didn't even
it's true.
realize
It's obvious. It's like beyond doubt.
Okay.
They accuse Trump of being anti-Semitic, and which is complete absurd, because on top of the fact that he has a Jewish daughter and a Jewish son-in-law who is actually operate really as his chief of staff.
He's linked somehow to Norton Mizvinsky, a friend of ours.
These are the Clintons.
No. Well, anyway, never mind. Yeah, we'll talk to Norton. I understand Norton's had a little difficulty.
I don't know if we're allowed to talk about it.
Beautiful guy, really
beautiful guy. Yeah,
I will.
I'll go to visit
No.
him day after tomorrow. Great guy. It is very interesting. Some Jewish, once Donald Trump was elected, some Jews started to admit that maybe Trump is the first Jewish president.
Oh, really?
When Bill Clinton was elected, he was the first black class. So they say about Trump. So now they start to own him. They don't have any other choice. He's
president.
But they definitely engage. If you read the foreword or some of the writers. I collected all those commentaries and articles. The Washington Post, Trump was attacked. His supporters were harshly attacked as white supremacists, as rednecks, as fascists. And by the way,
a lot of those people are in that coterie, yeah.
Maybe. But I started to ask some questions here. To start with, the Jews are such a small minority in this country. We are talking about something on the verge of 2%.
Yeah.
To launch a war against the white goyim, this is slightly unreasonable move. I couldn't understand why they do it. And by the way, I believe that they also don't understand why they do it. And I would like to elaborate on it. What I realized is that the Jewish intelligentsia, the people who put down Trump supporters within the media, understood, probably subconsciously, that those whom they call white supremacists and rednecks and so on,
who do exist,
we can talk about it. I don't know. I am sure that we can talk about it. I don't think that many people call themselves white supremacists. It's like the case. All right. Okay. So if a person, if I don't call myself white supremacist, and you call me white supremacist, I believe that you are doing it in order to insult me.
Yeah.
All right. And if I'm insulted, you are in trouble.
Yeah. And that's going on to a lot of different
This is when Jews
there's a lot of scapegoating.
Jews do it to Holocaust deniers. They call people Holocaust deniers.
Greeks do it.
Not a single Holocaust revisionist.
Do it. Let's do it. Let's defame.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Not a single Holocaust revisionist sees himself as a Holocaust denier. Said, we don't deny the Holocaust. We just deny a specific narrative because our reading suggests something else. So we can talk about it. What I realized, that those Jews within the Forward, within the Washington Post, within the New York Times, within the Guardian,
It includes a lot of the intellectual class.
For sure, they dominate the intellectual class, realized that for most American people, utopia, the progressive utopia, the promise all the time, is an empty notion. What they want instead of utopia is nostalgia. When Trump stood up and said, let's make America great again. That's it.
Right.
Again. Yeah. He basically told them our past is way more powerful than the present.
That's a remission.
Than the present. And this is a very interesting point, because the Jews who attacked Trump aggressively and attacked his voters viciously understood that what they're really yearning for is America pre-Jewish domination, America being productive, America of Henry Ford as opposed to America of George Soros and Goldman Sachs.
Okay, you said Jewish run. You think the United States of America is the Jewish component of the population is particularly strong?
I don't think that is.
What is the attitude toward Israel's existence? And
let me answer you. There is enough texts, academic texts, enough studies about American foreign policy. Being dominated by the Jewish lobby, largely AIPAC. I can think of James Petras.
Undying.
I can think about Mearsheimer and Walt and the incredible book.
Yeah.
People can read my work on it. There is enough about that. There is no doubt that America stopped being a productive manufacturing center 30, 40, some people would say even 50 years ago. And the most vivid element in your economy is Wall Street, just down the road.
Yeah. Okay.
And Wall Street is dominated by largely, not only, Jewish oligarchs. And it is hardly surprising that the five and all liberal Jewish papers bragged about it. The Jewish Chronicle, JTS, the Jewish news agency, forward about the fact that Hillary Clinton's 5 top donors were Jewish billionaires. Out the top of my head, I could remember Saban, Soros, Pritzker, Goldman Sachs. Okay, so there is an element of, this is how the Jews seeing it. This is very interesting. The Jews can see that those people in Michigan, in Detroit, they yearn America being productive.
We had a golden time after the Second World War here. For
you had golden time. Probably
after the Second War,
probably from the 20s, from the 1915, maybe First World War it started.
Were a little bit tricky.
Yeah, for sure, and it was tricky because of Wall Street.
Yeah, well, all right, and then we got out of it because of the war, and now the military spending still goes on. And
what is so interesting, so for me, is that while the Jewish intelligentsia interpretation of Trump as a yearning for a pre-Jewish domination society, Jewish-dominated society, the people in Michigan, they don't know anything about it. They just want to go to work. It occurred to me, they want to go to work. They don't care about Jews. They don't care about Wall Street. By the way, Wall Street could be at service of production. If you want to start to produce again, you will need finance. You will need good, very clever people who can start to roll this manufacturing process.
But you do see a long-term and systemic association with the labor theory of value, or the labor input to the productive process in view of the technological displacement of labor.
This is
large scale, and the whole.
We always get to this point, but it's a crucial point. It's a crucial point, and we can talk about it. I just want to finish this run of thought. What occurred to me, that if the people in Michigan don't really care about the Jews, why is it that the Jews in the Forward or in the Guardian who are so aggressive towards the people in Michigan, whom they call the white supremacists and so on and so on?
Well, maybe there are white supremacists. They did have a Ku Klux Klan. It's still active, and there's a lot of evidences of a lot of nasty things that happened in the interest of racism, including what happened in Nazi Germany.
I with all due respect, I think that considering the fact the Jewish identity is defined by race, it's actually those who subscribe to Jewish identity are at least as racist as the Ku Klux Klan in its most racist phase. All right, and the Palestinian can talk about it.
Yeah,
I just finished this point.
Finish. Okay.
I came to the conclusion
that
the Jewish aggression towards whom they called white supremacists, and in a second we can talk about white supremacy if there is such a thing, or rednecks, or Trump voters, is a manifestation of guilt.
Guilt.
For me, it's a guilt. Why guilt? Guilt is when you know that you are involved in something that is fundamentally wrong, and you're not ready.
Now that's really interesting.
I knew it took me some time to get there.
Because there's a lot of sub rosa nonsense in terms of what we're asked to accept in terms of the arrow of history, arrow.
For sure.
In this particular time, across the world.
I realized that if you want to understand what Jewish guilt is all about, you look into Jewish aggression
in Palestine.
Palestine is a good example.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
So
it's kind of a big thing sitting there.
If you see the Jewish aggression against the so-called anti-Zionists, it is because they try to conceal the fact that they are involved in a vile racist project. But I tell you something interesting. Look at the violence and the aggression of the Jewish anti-Zionists against people like myself, for instance. And again, why? Because they know that their project, JVP, for instance, Jewish Voice for Peace, it sounds great. But Jewish Voice for Peace is a Jewish-only club. It is exactly as racist as Israel. Jewish Voice for Peace is aggressive towards people like Greta Berlin, Alison Weir, Gilad Atzmon, and so on, because they accept somehow, in a certain layer, that what Alison Weir is saying is true. What Gilad Atzmon is saying is true. They are motivated by Jewish interests. So, in order to understand Jewish guilt, we have to just spot the Jewish aggression and to track it backward. Very simple.
One thing we ought to get straight here: you're an Anglo-Saxon, right? You're a white Anglo-Saxon Protestant.
Not yet.
Do you have anything to do with the Jewish background or not?
Yeah. I was.
I'm making a joke. I'm making a joke.
I know. It's very clear. It's very clear to me. No, the truth of the matter is that I am Anglo-Saxon, but I'm Anglo-Saxon, and I realized my name. I live in Britain. I was born in Britain. My real name is John Stewart, and I realized that I would never be able to get away with such kind of ideas, being John Stewart or John Smith. And I adopted this Israeli accent. It took me ages,
You had to work on that.
It's not good. We were working, and now I can say whatever I want about the Jews as an ex-Jew. I've never been, I'm not even circumcised, which I can. It's quite opportunity.
Never mind. We don't have to go into all that. Well, now where is it? I'm. That's really interesting and everything. All that thing you really spell things out in an interesting way. Certainly, there's something going on in a big way, don't you think? I believe that that there's a tremendous angst loosed in the world about what in the world is going on. Whether it's shown in the manifestation of a Donald Trump, he took over this country with the media. They followed him like the Pied Piper of Hamelin. That when he got onto Twitter and was able to negotiate it was a Twitter, Facebook, social media campaign as opposed to a television one or a radio one.
I think that
he took over brilliantly the whole country.
I think that the guy. Is incredibly sophisticated, but not sophisticated in academic terms or intellectual terms.
I think people.
He has, and to underestimate his ability is, I believe, a moronic approach. I tell you what happened. At a certain stage, I found myself interested in his success. I predicted his victory,
early
and I realized.
Did you see it spotted early on?
You did. Very early. Even in this program.
Right.
At a certain stage, I realized that I want to see what he has to say, because every time I looked in the BBC, or CNN or Fox, all I saw is kind of quotes of his Twitter feeds. So I joined. I decided to follow Donald Trump. I just went to his Twitter feed, and I realized that for the first time in my life, I have a direct access to the brain of a person who is about to sit in
he had a way about him. He had a way about him. When I really believe, and I could identify in a certain sense. When he would walk up to the podium, I really don't think he necessarily knew what he was going to say when he opened his mouth. He was spontaneous.
It's totally
and
spontaneous.
That is something that people,
like a jazz artist.
Like a jazz artist.
He is improvised. He's improvised, and part of it.
He's just winging it.
Part of it means
and people like that. They
for sure.
They recognize that as part of confidence.
Because it's part of confidence, and it reminds them what it meant to be an American when the First Amendment was respected as a constitutional right.
Yeah, right.
Because here in America, you are living for 30-40 years under the tyranny of correctness. I think the most interesting thing that I explored in recent weeks was the impact of Archie Bunker. Do you remember Archie Bunker?
Of course I remember.
Archie Bunker was one of America's most popular TV characters. Some said that he was number one.
That's television. It's a different proposition. The media is more important. The media is the message, in Marshall McLuhan terms, and the media is what we should understand. Donald Trump was the first social media. He was talking directly past the press, past the established press,
You're right.
past the established to people, 18
You're
million
right.
people.
That's
unique.
It's unique, and I speak about Archie Bunker exactly because of that. Because Archie Bunker was one of the most entertaining TV characters in your history.
Yeah.
The most annoying character in this program was Meathead.
Meathead. That was his
this
foil.
moron,
Yeah.
banal, politically correct character. And yet, 10 years later, 20 years later, despite the fact that we loved Archie Bunker so much, we all ended up being meatheads.
Yeah.
Now, for me, it was very interesting to go back to witness the strategies that were used by Norman Lear at the time in the 60s and the 70s. The CIA, the FBI were looking for communist anti-war infiltrators that are kind of organized in political cell. Norman Lear was sitting here in an office in New York, writing the next program, delivered his Jewish revolutionary idea to every house in America. You were indoctrinated while eating popcorn with your kids.
Yeah, but you were doing it over the established media, the networks. You see, they were talking on NBC or on CNN, where everybody followed the election and everything like that. Not in terms of what the issues were or the people or something. They were talking about it in media terms.
Yeah.
And maybe it's worthwhile thinking about that, because we're going through a media revolution, and that media is the media is like Roosevelt was a radio presence. That was the media by which he could try to use some telegraph or something, but it was media. Then you get to a president. You had Kennedy was probably a television media.
For sure.
Context in which he operated, that has a certain bias toward the group politics of the whole country, or the thinking. And then there came a thing called cable. That was something addendum or beyond, with the vast number of channels you can do and so forth. A new thing.
I thought that Bill Clinton was probably the YouPorn president.
Yeah. The what?
Never mind.
YouPorn?
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's a thing. Yeah, he was down there in Arkansas.
Monica, she was. It was a nice story. You know,
well,
how she preserved, for all these years, the semen on the dress.
It's a little crazy, but anyway, but in terms of the media, but then there came cable, and that would be Clinton or something like that. But what is new, and what it is, Mr. Trump is the first social media. And the social media is a brand apart from the history of media.
It's more than social media. His medium is really Twitter. And why?
Well,
he has this capacity.
I think Facebook is probably part of an introduction to that, but then the Twitter full blast.
By the way,
he was able to fit right into that. And he was made for it.
It is very interesting because Trump. Maybe I'm wrong, but if I understand it correctly, Trump's main outlet was Twitter. Now, Twitter is a very unique outlet.
You have 140 characters. The establishment.
140 characters.
In a world that is not enamored any longer of the establishments.
You're right.
Have come out of history.
You're right. Now, 140 characters. How many people?
12 to the 12th power.
How many people can come with a message, with a winning message? In just 5 or 7 words.
No, you know how to. It's like you can get direct to the people. They don't have to be worried about the interpreters or the scholars or the intellectuals, the politicians. You go straight to the people who get a sense of being a fellowship around somebody who can work that new medium.
For sure. Now,
and
if we look at Trump's supporters were actually mobilizing Facebook. I don't think that Trump himself was operating aggressively on Facebook. I never seen
a single. Twitter is the real thing.
Yeah, but Twitter for Trump.
It's going to grow.
But his supporters managed to disseminate a lot of interesting ideas. Yeah. Some of them. Maybe some people say now it's what they call fake news.
Yeah,
but I want to say something about fake news.
You don't get a lot of careful footnoted nuance on 140 characters.
For sure, this.
It's made for attack.
It's made for sure, but when it came to Facebook. This is where we saw some films, we saw some troubling ideas, frightening ideas about American democratic elite involved in pedophilia networks. Whether it is true or not, it was really well made. Now America is obsessed with this new story about fake news
from Russia.
Russia
is infecting.
I'm not that impressed with America being concerned with fake news because, as far as I can remember, you launched an awful war in Iraq.
It was horrible. That was the worst mistake that Mr. Bush.
Based on a story on Iraqi weapons of mass destruction.
Yeah,
this was fake news. This was a fake news.
We're paying for that all
and it's a war with no end. We just saw today, what is happening.
Do you realize that our budget in the United States of America is 60% is for the military? There's a little bit here for Social Security, a little bit for this, a little bit for that. Nearly 60% is the military, and they're going to do that even stronger now. They're going to be supporting remaking and the Trident submarines and so forth in order to give them.
You know what is my feeling about it? And I'm saying something horrible thing.
Say it.
Yeah, for sure I'll say it. I just want to prepare
Get ready for the riff. Get ready for the killer riff.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a killer riff, but it's a very dangerous situation. I have a feeling that democracy in the West is in a state of complete bankruptcy. The elite understand that they cannot really dominate the situation. So it's not that we the people are voting what they want us to vote, because until now, if we were not happy, I said, listen, it's your problem. This is the people, you voted Tony Blair, you voted Bush, you voted Trump. Yeah. And I believe that democracy is going to change. Our freedom to think, to vote, will take a different shape. I think that we are moving towards a frightening authoritarian phase, and my feeling is that this budget that is allocated to military will turn against us, the people. Both in America, in Britain, we see more and more policing, more and more drones, more and more tactics.
More ability to eavesdrop on everybody. And
so it is not necessarily to destroy other countries. Sooner or later, it will turn against us, the people.
Yeah. So we're at a time of quality, and you've got deep-seated angst all over the place and everything, and it would come in this country, and I think it's in the world. We're coming to a new order of things, and it's technologically induced as what has happened. The extension of our consciousness into technological instruments that affect and create. We form our tools, and thereafter our tools ape us. That was James Joyce. That we shape these tools, and those tools that we shape, and the technology is one that that affects us. And those things are coming to be where they were all formulated. The institutions were formulated within a certain pattern of thinking about things universally and so forth. But that they were formulated within a historical context that is being, whether we like it or not, is being qualitatively transformed at a level of capability that is growing exponentially. And on one vector, you've got the weapon systems now by which Realpolitik rule Britannia, the Gatling gun in Italy, in India. Political legitimacy was established and maintained by brute force of military capability to cower or overcome the other. And the weapons now have become species lethal. They're there.
For sure.
You know, but that's something new. We couldn't do it in the Second World War. We were trying to kill each other as best we possibly could. I'll tell you, we were going to kill, and it was just gut-wrenching hatred and so forth. And we were impotent at that. Now we have weapons. Do you think it's true? Have you thought about it? We have weapons if they're to be unleashed in a spasm of angst-ridden and scapegoating to the max upset are unleashed in some crazy notion, particularly the tridents in the American fleet, that it would be the end of the entire Homo sapiens species. Now, there wouldn't be a single human being survive. That's a pretty. There's evidence.
It is a reasonable fear. It is a reasonable fear.
Will it make
the one thing that I came to realize is that when we look at the wars we are engaged in the Middle East, we are throwing bombs on Muslims.
Yeah,
from drones, you know. For us, it's at large a computer game.
Well, there's a
but many of those Arabs and Muslims are not willing to accept it, and
well, that could lead to the conditions
our environment
another insult,
you know.
And okay, push the button.
We are not living in a shielded environment.
We were shielded in our impotence until just yesterday, historically, at that level.
Yeah.
So we could play games and we could fight. We could have a Gatling gun over a rifle.
We play games, but this game playing is backfiring. Well, yes and look at what is happening in France. Look at France was subject. You know, France was stupid enough to be led into this idiotic Zionist wars by one of their so-called French Jewish philosopher, Bernard-Henri Lévy, who said, I liberated Libya as a Jew.
Well, maybe
France, Paris, Bataclan, you know, this society is subject to a very big political transition at the moment, and the outcome is unpredictable.
Well, there's things are.
And as much as Trump was unpredictable here, as much as Brexit is unpredictable.
Do you use the word very much synergy in your thinking or your commentary? Synergy, behavior system, unpredictable, the sum of the parts. You guys jam, and if you really hit it high C sometime when everybody's hitting it all, there's something special there in the synergistic resonancy that interaccommodates system. Do you understand what I mean?
I'm not sure.
Well, synergy is the behavior of systems unpredicted by the sum of the parts. You're dividing it all up. Identity politics, whatever it is, there's something more.
By the way, and when we are talking about, unpredictability, it is very clear that some people fail to predict. Podesta couldn't predict Trump victory. Hillary Clinton, it took her 9 hours to understand the news. She was locked in the room. Miserable woman.
Oh, the point.
But some people did predict that Trump has some serious chances to come up as a winner in this election. Some people did predict the Brexit. The people who cannot predict, or the institutions or the ideologies that fail to predict, they suffer from institutional detachment. Institutional detachment from reality, and I argue in my new work that detachment.
Is there a book?
There is a new book.
What's the book? What's it called?
I'm still.
It's not out yet.
It's not. It's basically The Wandering 2.
The Wandering
2. But I don't know how to call it yet. Either 200 or either 2WO. I don't know. And Wandering.
You're going to keep playing on these words.
Yeah, I'm playing. Maybe.
Yeah. You sound like a jazz musician.
I tried it once. It's quite nice. I'm a swinger.
Yeah.
Anyway, so when it comes to unpredictability, in most cases, we are dealing with institutions that are in a state of detachment. And I argue, and this is important, that the left is always in a state of detachment. And why? Because the left is telling us how the world ought to be. It's not what the world is, that what it should become, or what it could be. Rather than what people are, it's what people should be. Rather than what the people in Michigan are and what are their needs, Hillary Clinton tried to tell us what should be the values that they should accept in a foreseeable future.
That would bring me over to the other point that I wanted to make, because in the dialectic understanding of evolution, synergistically, we're part of an evolutionary process and everything, with surprises coming, with the new appearing and so forth. But the fact that you get to a point where the old ways that are supported politically by realpolitik, or whoever's got the biggest gun can control and everything like that, and it gets to be where that is sort of an end game that can't be asserted in anything real. But then on the other side of that, of the reality, outside of the politics and what is going on, seeing it, is the other kind of thing that we also have a tremendous capability of providing life support materialistically for the population of the world that is equally significant existentially to the human condition as is the destructive capability we have. And we have an ability to have a world that the utopians or the people have been dreaming about, or all of our sages and our intellectuals have thought about, that we have a capability of bringing down on the earth a really truly just for all system for all within a context of capability that is transcending material scarcity at an ontologic level. It exists. Not has to be won by some election or by some thought. It's already there, and we have it there, and it's being felt, and we don't have systems because we're all caught up with outdated systems coming out of history that we have to get over or subsume in order to get a new idea. How are we going to organize to allow the capability, technologically augmented, to supply everyone with the kind of context.
I tell you what.
We may be coming to the end of the period of time that we began 200,000 years ago with the Homo sapiens species, and we can't get. It was like Galileo said we weren't the center of the universe. Made everybody very, very upset because it messed up their identity. We got a bunch of historical inherited institutions and understanding of history that is outdated. Manifest in the politics, and we need to have, where are the intellectuals that are taking the measure of things comprehensively rather than just within the political context? I
think that these are very interesting thoughts, and I think that we are clearly at an end of an era.
That began 200,000 years ago with the emergence of the Homo sapiens species, perhaps.
I wouldn't yet agree that we are about to depart from
one little riff on a saxophone somewhere where you get to something different than the context everybody's seeing things economically
what is very clear is that in spite of our technological advantages, we are not caring for the population.
You're slipping back into politics. I'm asking you not to slip into that. Where are the people who are measuring things, the leading edge of intellectual understanding, that can see that we have now got a new condition able to provide at that end time, perhaps. The destruction is an end time.
But this is the issue. It's not the political.
We could liberate the human society.
But this is the issue.
Material.
It's not the political system, because the political system faded away. We are living now in a post-political era.
Well, that's interesting in itself.
And this is very interesting. Yeah. It's very interesting, and this is why the presidential election is a political game. It probably has zero significance on the life of most Americans.
One thing it is all
Brexit. Yeah. A huge political debate that has zero significance.
It's a relatively small matter. It's a relatively small. All these things you're talking about are relatively small compared to the fact that there's something more than the sum of the maximum
I'm going to give you something to play with, to think about. It is more than likely that we got now to the point where we can see, we the people, that the system as it operates now is not leading us anywhere. The global capitalism, the big markets, the trade deals, and so on and so on.
That's history.
And so on. This is global, the recent history of global capitalism. And we understand that if global capitalism is a problem, one possible, or maybe the only solution, the only ethical solution, is socialism involved with nationalism, or if you want to say the other way around, national socialism. National socialism. Now, I'm not going to advocate here a Mussolini or Hitler. What I mean by that is that the acceptance that it is actually the American people have to look primarily after themselves. They have to find the means to live in a better state of equality, and yet to think about themselves as a country with borders, as a national state, to accept that other countries are also national state and have the right to live in equality, which means that America removes itself from its expansionist, imperialist philosophy. This is considering, you spoke about it like 10, 15 minutes ago, considering our destructive powers.
Yeah.
This is the only way to remove ourselves from a state of a complete threat is to move into a universe that is made of many nations, that celebrates their culture, and also looking more into equality. Now, this is very, very difficult because in the state of robotics industry, there is no much need of labor force.
Labor theory of value goes
All
out
right.
the window.
But if you are operating within national state, you can control the need of labor.
Yeah.
So you can say, if you buy an American car, it will cost you $2,000. If you want to buy Japanese car, it's fine, but it will cost you $50,000.
Oh, well.
All right?
Well,
all right? And
yeah.
this is the way economy used to work 30, 40 years ago. Then you decide how you mobilize your working force, how you look after people who are slightly less able intellectually in terms of ability. You make sure that they have a reason to wake up in the morning and they can support their families.
Well, that would be good, and they could draw upon that. But one thing is, out of the past, it's a zero sum is a thing that is assumed by most of our institutional structures. That means there's a condition irrevocably of scarcity. There's not enough of anything. So in order for one to win, the others have to lose. All these national things, they have to win. That is zero sum. The capability cannot have it be for everybody. Maybe that's the assumption that it's part of the structure of the universe. We're going to have to get over that, perhaps, and find out that we've gotten to a point where we do zero sum. For one to win, others don't have to lose. In fact, for everybody can win, and that's a contextual advantage that we can tap into with our intellectuals.
One of the reasons that Donald Trump won is because we are nostalgic to the environment in which every American had a reason to wake up in the morning. A milkman could support a family of 5 people, and in the end of the month to buy some nonsense that he really didn't need. You know, this is we're going back to Bernays.
Well,
you know,
he was great.
You know, now, as much as the liberal ate Bernays, you know, and not that I like Bernays, what American people want now is back to that environment of Bernays, where we can celebrate our false need. Now, false need is the way to make a society being productive. As long as we are the producers. It is very simple.
Well, that's something that is worth saying, and you've just said it.
I will say, yeah.
And it's interesting, as always. It's really interesting. It's been your pleasure to hear from Gilad, and it's so good to see you again. Keep on playing that sax and keep on talking. We got to keep talking like this. Yeah. I think we've come to a post zero sum world. Robert Wright's writing on that. A lot of people are. There is enough for all for the first time ever, and we've got to tap into that as an ontologic thing to base our politics upon, rather than the greed-based zero-sum assumptions of the larger context that comes out of history. But that's another issue.
Greed is good when it's a collective thing.
All right. Okay. Anyway, your pleasure to have his perception. Thanks for coming in. So good to talk to you.
Nice one.
We invite you to tune in. We'll come back in tomorrow. That's it for now. So once again, Gilad, thank you so very much. It's always good to talk to you.
Nice one.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I think that's about it. Okay. Thank you. Boy, you got a lot in, pal. That was really